Apple is running low on Apple Watch ideas, okay? I think that's been pretty present for a while. The Apple Watch team was so desperate for new hardware ideas that they actually made a commercial talking about how the Apple Watch already does everything they could think of. Don't say camera. Oh my god. Do not even bring up the camera on the watch thing. I've been against that since day one. But if they do ever bring a camera to the watch, it'll be because they are truly just desperate and cannot think of anything. But Bloomberg had some talks about what to expect with the Apple Watch Series 7, and it does include some redesigns, which in my opinion might be the only direction the Apple Watch can continue to go. Let's begin. So as I've talked about before, I think the Apple Watch is kind of the oddball. It's kind of standing out throughout the ecosystem because as we've seen with the new gorgeous, beautiful, and uncontroversial 24-inch iMac design, Apple's leaning into that squared off look. The same squared off look we got on the iPad Pro, and now the iPad Air, and now the iPhone 12. That's just a fashion trend, and I think Apple's gonna ping pong back and forth on it for a while. Right now we're in the squared off trend. In a couple of years they'll probably go back to the rounded off chassis, or rounded off back and flat on the front, kind of like the old iPod Touches. But in the meantime, while everything is moving towards the squared off design, the Apple Watch has not. In fact, it is still very much embracing that rounded chassis, which some people like and are fine with. You happen to have the wrong incorrect opinion because it is not mine, and I happen to wonder when Apple is going to make that turn and turn the Apple Watch into more of a squared off look so that we have a bit more design symmetry between our iPhones, iPads, and yes, even the Macs. Is there a functional advantage to redesigning the Apple Watch to make it more square? Not really. I mean, you could probably make some argument that by making it more squared off, you can more efficiently pack components into this device, and Bloomberg did not say that the squared off design is happening. However, they did say that Apple is testing thinner bezels overall with a new display lamination technique. So we don't know what the details of that are, how much thinner the bezels could be, but in my opinion, if there's ever a redesign that allows for the display to be larger and easier to see without adding to the overall weight and making the device bigger in any noticeable capacity, if it's just like slightly wider or slightly thicker, I think that's okay. But overall, a bigger display on the watch, in my opinion, is a win, because that means easier to read complications, more data can be displayed, and a more immersive, interactive experience with the Apple Watch as a whole. And I also think that since the Series 4, there have been very little reasons for people to update their Apple Watches. Always on display was probably the biggest one, although that was not a crucial feature for me. I'm totally fine with not having one. I sometimes turn it on my Series 6 and other times turn it off depending on if I want to prioritize battery life or that kind of thing. But personally, the main reason I'm wearing a Series 6 is just because I really wanted that red chassis. That's something I've wanted for years and they finally did it. If there was a red Apple Watch SE, I would have bought that. I would have gravitated towards that. Even if they just announced that the old Series 4 now comes in red, I would buy that just because it was a color thing and the watch is somewhat of a fashion piece. So the way it looks, I think, matters a bit more than, say, the way a Mac looks or even the way an iPad looks, because those aren't really things that we wear on ourselves. So I know that there's probably a lot of people saying, like, I don't care if the Apple Watch gets redesigned. If there's no functional benefit, I'm not upgrading. And that's totally justified. That's a fair viewpoint, because the Apple Watch, I think, has very clearly peaked, and maybe peaked is the wrong word, but matured in a sense that they have kind of figured out how to make a successful watch. It's like the #1 selling watch in the world. Very popular, very practical. A lot of people enjoy using it. They love the way it fits into their ecosystem. They love the way it works with their iPhone. And does it have to always be gaining new features? Does it always have to be getting substantially better year over year? Yes, Apple. I need content. Make decisions. But honestly, no, it doesn't. And I think that's okay. And I think that because of the market dominance Apple has with the Apple Watch, it's totally fine if they just want to take a year to refine some design choices, make it fit better in with the ecosystem, maybe allow some new finishes to come back, like either the ceramic, or if Apple gets really bored, they bring back the solid gold Apple Watch edition, which sounded dumb, but in the long run, those watches ended up becoming more valuable and appreciated in value over time, unlike every other Apple Watch, which depreciated over time. So it's actually not that stupid of an idea in the end, but the only other improvements Bloomberg detailed in the report is that they're planning updated ultra-wideband technology, which makes me laugh because the Apple Watch Series 6 has the U1 chip, but for some reason via software, they don't want to allow it to have the same type of tracking functionality of AirTags, which thanks to iOS 15 and watchOS 8, it sounds like you will be able to have a proximity-based helper through the Find My app, so you hold your phone closer to the Apple Watch and the distance from your phone to it gets smaller, but it doesn't actually give you an arrow like AirTags do. I don't know why that can't be enabled via over-the-air software update. Maybe it will be, we just haven't seen it yet. And the other thing Bloomberg talked about was a faster processor, of course, because that was everyone's main confusion with the Series 6. At the end of the day, though, I understand that when it's a watch, and especially these days, we know people are probably going to buy these watches and hold on to them for years and years and years. Having a slower CPU could actually, in the long run, hurting you quite a bit with future software updates. As Apple is seeing with the Series 3, they have to be very, very careful whenever they issue an update to that watch because the CPU and GPU is so slow and it takes a while for it to update. So they're like, please leave it on the charger. Also, please make a backup for this thing. So trying to have a healthy amount of overhead with the watch is fine. It's just funny when the S6 chip is like unmatched by any other smartwatch by far, and they're still like, okay, but how do we make it faster? I'm starting to be convinced we'll see Final Cut Pro come to the Apple Watch before the iPad. But of course, I have seen the reports floating around there that a squared Apple Watch is in the works, and personally, other than a few details like the speaker grill and the layout of the watch band connectors and the renders by Ian, I think it looks pretty good. I could get into it, but at the same time, I do see a ton of people out there say they hate the squared off look and it's change for the sake of change. People think it's going to be uncomfortable for some reason, even though you don't hold the watch, it just stays on your wrist. And if you're the type of person to put the watch right here so that it cuts into your hand when you move it, like, you're not wearing it right. I'll do the Steve Jobs moment for this one. You're wearing it wrong, because I think for the most natural position for most Apple Watches, thanks to that charge bulge on the back of the watch, it's not going to be sitting on top of your skin, it's sitting slightly above, so even if it's squared off, it's not going to be uncomfortable. And if it is uncomfortable, well, guess what? You'll still have the Apple Watch SE to choose from. If you prefer the rounded off design, the Series 5 and 6, I'm sure, are still going to be available on sale through other mediums or certified refurbished through Apple. Is going to be a way better value than just buying it new. And functionally, I don't think the Series 7 is going to be much different from the Series 6. So if it's design, the only thing that's bugging you, then yeah, just get a 5 or 6. I'm sure it'll last you 4, 5, 7 years, depending on how long Apple decides to keep providing software updates for these things. But it's a watch at the end of the day. Even if you don't get an update, you can at least just check the time on it and cover the basics. Either way, though, I'm very curious to see how Apple can bring a modern, more aesthetically pleasing and yet ecosystem fitting design to the Apple Watch, because for the most part, the design has not changed since 2018, and even that was kind of incremental. So if we're getting thinner bezels, I'm for it. If we're getting a squared off chassis, I'm for it. If there's some new health sensor that we didn't have before, okay, great. But Bloomberg said health sensors might have been pushed till next year. So sorry, diabetics. Hopefully we get our glucose monitoring soon, because I do agree that would be a game changer, but I guess the hardware isn't ready yet. Let me know what the top requested feature you guys have is for the next generation Apple Watch, because people always have the weirdest or dumbest responses. For those who forgot, basically, if you try to attach a camera to the Apple Watch, you're just going to be looking up people's nostrils, and your battery life is going to get nuked in like a couple seconds, and your arm is going to get tired from holding the watch like that. So you do not want a camera on the watch. Even if you think you do, you don't. Your brain is playing tricks on you. Don't listen to those tricks. The brain named itself. You can't trust that guy. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.